Living the dream.
What is the dream?
It's a state of being. My dream is living my dreams and not my fears. Being with the flow, I guess is the best way to put it. A higher degree of acceptance. And I think the best way is just recognizing that everything that happens is happening for me.
And I don't even know if it's sincere sometimes. And I have a vision, I get excited, but then if I'm in fear, I don't do it. Whereas if I'm in the flow and I'm courageous enough to share it and maybe take steps, that's a whole different gig. Because again, I think a lot of visionaries get stuck. I'm Coach Bob, host of Viva La Visionary, and very excited to start season 2 of Viva La Visionary with Dave Feidner. Dave, how are you today?
Living the dream.
What is the dream?
It's a state of being.
I love it. What's your dream?
My dream is living my dreams and not my fears.
I love that.
So if you want specific dreams, that's a longer conversation.
Well, if you can keep it to a minute or two, I'd love to hear it.
I think the main thing is being with the flow, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right.
Sort of a Taoist approach to not being in resistance to anything that happens. A higher degree of acceptance. And I think the best way is just recognizing that everything that happens is happening for me.
I love it. And as I understand it, I agree with what you're laying down. It's interesting because when I hear someone say a common phrase, I wonder if it's just what they say. So a lot of people say living the dream, and I don't even know if it's sincere sometimes. And I know you're very sincere. I appreciate your, again, even the flow and that spirit and that energy that I know you're living and sharing, which is awesome. So I thought you would have a deeper answer to that.
So I don't know where I got this originally. I think it might have been Steve Hardison. You know, Steve Hardison, the coach, ultimate coach. And it was about speak things into existence.
Yep.
So for example, with my wife, I do have to tell her I love her with some regularity.
Right.
Because absent doing that, there's an assumption.
Yep.
So it's the same thing when somebody asks me, how am I doing? I say I'm living the dream because I am speaking that into existence.
Right. I totally agree with that. And that, to me, is an opportunity for us visionaries. We have an idea or things have come together, and if it stays up here, it doesn't go anywhere. And then I speak it and then believe it and do it, and it usually happens. Maybe not exactly how I thought, but we are speaking it into existence.
That's the idea,
yes.
yeah.
Right.
So I always say that, and it has become a default condition for me. But I say it with a smile on my face, and if I'm smiling more often than not, good things generally happen.
Right. I love it. So I know a lot about your story in the last 10 years. And again, I think it's a great story. Tell me a little bit about your past business adventures, because I know I think it was overseas, correct? Mm-hmm. So if you could tell me a little bit about your story before you became Philosopher Dave and the EOS implementer, which we'll get into next.
Before I named myself Philosopher Dave, or some of my colleagues named me Philosopher Dave. Before that, so I'm mid-60s now.
Yep. We'd
be going back, let's call it, 40, 45 years or so. I got connected with a family business, and I essentially grew up, my career was with that family business. Got to know the owners of the business really, really well, and was an active participant in building what ultimately became a nationwide company. Around 25, 30 years ago, I convinced them to let me take them global. So I left the U.S., and then I proceeded to launch and build a dozen companies throughout Europe and Latin America, and ultimately grew that into a completely separate entity.
Nice.
That was doing hundreds of millions in revenue.
Right.
And I got connected with a group of investors, joined up with them. Ultimately, we bought out the original family owners, and then some years later, we sold it to a much bigger company.
Awesome. So what was I don't want to overthink roles, but what was your role in that business before you sold it?
I was the visionary.
Okay. Did you even call it that back then?
No.
Right.
But it was, people would say to you, hey, Dave, you're a bit of a visionary.
Right.
Where do you come up with these things?
Yeah.
Why do you do these crazy things?
So that's
what are you doing opening a business in the south of France? What the hell is that all about?
Now, had you spent time in Europe before you did that?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that to me is daunting. And yet, again, you had a vision, but at least you had been there before.
Yeah.
Right. So you made connections, you saw gaps or opportunities, you pulled people together with that vision, achieved that vision, and ultimately part of that vision was to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. And that to me, it's not just a visionary having a vision, you actually realize that vision, which isn't easy.
Yeah. And to be fair, what it ended up being is not what I thought it was going to be. I just started and took the next step. When I did get connected with the investors and they challenged me,
Right.
then I had both the backing of the family, and then I had these other individuals that essentially were saying, yeah, I think you're doing the right thing. Keep doing that because this could be something huge.
Right. So what percentage of the time do you think you or people, visionaries that you work with or know their exact vision, or at least have a vision that they can act on? Because to your point, it's not that you had that exact vision, but you had a vision, you rolled on it, you adapted. So I think some people don't know what the exact vision is. And that to me, I don't think is what we have to. It's just, I have a vision, I'm in the vicinity here, and I'm going to act on it and then keep rolling.
Yeah. I'm definitely one of those people who was kind of like in the vicinity
Right.
and just literally took the next logical step. What I find with a lot of visionaries, there is like this very, very clear big thing,
Right.
but it's shifting often quite a bit.
Right.
The makeup of it, the dynamics of it, the intricacies of it will shift. And that's generally what their biggest challenge is in getting everybody else on the same page with it. Because until they do that, they really can't execute on it.
Right. Because otherwise the ship is going this direction. We say, let's go here. And it takes a little while. And we've already gone back over there.
Yeah. Or sometimes they hit a ceiling and whatever that thing is, they get so stuck in it that it just consumes them. And you can't see past it. You can't see past the struggle that's in front of you. You might still, that vision is still there, but it's starting to get a little cloudy because the thing that's in front of you is so painful and hard.
So does that come back to your comment on flow? Whereas if I'm a visionary and I have a vision, I get excited, but then if I'm in fear, I don't do it. Whereas if I'm in the flow and I'm courageous enough to share it and maybe take steps, that's a whole different gig. Because again, I think a lot of visionaries get stuck. So any comments to visionaries being in the flow and how that can help as opposed to being stuck or in fear?
Well, there's this concept called the change equation. Are you familiar with it?
Please share.
All right. And so I got to make sure I've got all the components to this correct. So to change anything, there is a vision component to it. You have to have an idea of what it is that you want in the future. The cloudier that is, the harder things are going to be. But you also have to have some level of dissatisfaction with the status quo.
Right.
Sometimes these two things can be in conflict. The status quo, pain can be so great, it's harder to imagine the vision.
Right.
The other thing that you have to have is a first step.
Right.
So generally the way the equation works is high level of dissatisfaction, some concept of what you want differently, and a first step to take.
Yep.
Those three components combined have got to be greater than the resistance to change.
Right.
And the resistance to change exists in the status quo. Because even though the status quo can be painful sometimes, there's almost always a benefit that you're getting from it. Therefore, you've got to have these factors in place. So I've always been the one who just kind of like, if I can imagine what that next step is, I just take the next step and then see what happens from there.
Jump, it's not that far. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. So you sold that business, and what'd you do after that?
Well, I remained for probably too long in a leadership position running that business.
Got it.
And it all kind of came to a painful end at a board meeting in New York.
Yeah.
And I literally had to hand it off to ultimately my successor, who was the leader of a company we had acquired. And he is, to this day, the CEO of that company. And he's a good friend. I'm very proud of him.
Right.
I'm very happy for what he has done with that business. But it was literally a boardroom change that happened.
Do you think it shouldn't have happened, or did you wish it didn't happen, or looking back, was it best for everyone?
Yeah, it was the best. And it happened for me. And I think to a certain extent, I was recognizing that at the time because I was going through a lot of pain personally. It's very different when you're running a business and it's essentially your business to run. It's much different when you've got a board and you've got some heavy investors behind you.
You're working for someone, which I realized I was unemployable about 35 years ago.
Yeah, so that's the essence of it, right? You're unemployable.
Yeah. So then after that, after the board meeting, what was next?
So after that, it took a little bit of time to unwind, to really do the handoff, and for me to move back to the US and get myself out of doing that. And because I had looked at a lot of acquisitions, many that obviously didn't get done, but half a dozen or so that did get done, there were relationships with these business owners who came calling and saying, okay, you didn't buy me. What do I have to do? And so I started consulting.
Right.
And it was in working with one of them that I discovered EOS.
Got it.
And I immediately had a familiarity with it because I had been a Rockefeller Habits practitioner. Not a really strong practitioner, but I had hired a number of individuals who had been members of YPO, and was one of those individuals who introduced me to the Rockefeller Habits, the one-page strategic plan, et cetera.
Right.
But we really had not got a lot of traction.
Right.
It didn't stick as well. So when I saw this, what I found in EOS was a complete system that closed the loops on some of the gaps that I had previously encountered. And so I started implementing with that one particular client as a Basecamp member. And then I got to understand the concept of the EOS community. And I said, I think I will get better at doing this faster if I join with that community. And that's what I did.
Right. And that was how many years ago?
That was 7 years ago.
Okay. And
technically 8 years ago, because it took me about a year to ultimately join the community.
Right. So quick side note, do you know where Rockefeller Habits started?
I don't.
Here in Detroit.
Yeah.
So
you're going to tell me a story about Vern and you.
Not me, Vern and EO.
Yep.
So Vern, as from my recollection and my understanding, Vern was one of the people that started EO, the entrepreneur organization, used to be YEO. And when John Anderson and Marty Petz got together and said, let's start EO Detroit, John had a relationship with Vern. And so Vern came and kind of helped us kickstart EO here. And I was like the second group that came into EO Detroit. So I fortunately got to know Vern and whatnot, a genius. And really, to me, kind of the founder on a small to mid-sized business system. And so he was staying at John Anderson's place and read the biography of Rockefeller.
Oh.
And he came. So again, this is my recollection, but that was really kind of the foundation of that, because he's like, it's pretty simple. And Vern is amazing. And again, what he created was awesome and helped so many people. And then Gino came in and kind of, to me, made it a little bit simpler and created the community. But I both of Vern and Gino and John are even heroes of mine, but definitely mentors of mine. Yeah. But again, we're going to talk a little bit about Detroit, but it's kind of cool that started here.
Yeah, it was good to see both John and Gino get EO Hall of Fame 2 years ago.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. And they've done so much for entrepreneurs, and especially for entrepreneurs here in Detroit. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, so what do you think? So you are a visionary. You had successes as a visionary, learning opportunities. What would you say are the typical roles for a visionary? Like, what are we responsible for? Because a lot of people say, what do they do? Or a lot of people say, what do I do as a visionary?
Yeah. So there's this concept called the 4 I's of transformational leadership. Are you familiar with this?
Love it, but now I want to hear it.
So one of them is the inspirational motivation. That's one of the I's. And that is, you're essentially creating the vision, but it's usually an act of co-creation.
Right.
But your job as the visionary is to just remind the hell remind people constantly of what that thing is, because that is the big why for everything that you're doing. And what you're doing gets really, really hard sometimes. And people will question why we were doing this when it's so painful. Right. That's the visionary's job, to remind people of what the why is. Right. So that's one of the I's. The other I is not inspirational motivation. It is intellectual stimulation. So your job as a visionary is to ask the questions, which I know can be hard for some visionaries because they often want to provide the answers. But it is
even if we're not asked.
It is to stimulate the intellect of the team members so that they're being their very best. And it is also to be, forget exactly what this I is, but you are, in essence, the embodiment of the core values of the organization. Right. You are adhering to a set of values. You are putting yourself forward as that, as the ideal of those values. And you're also opening yourself vulnerably to be challenged on when you are not. Right. So your job is to be the model of whatever those core values are, including allowing people to call you out when you are not that. And then the final I is around individualized consideration, that you take the time for your people to get to know your people so that you can build trust. So the idea here is that a really good visionary with their direct reports, the direct report can walk away and say, hey, you know what? My boss gets me. Right. Yeah.
Very interesting. A lot of thoughts there, but I don't know if it's the simplest, but again, you are Philosopher Dave, and I appreciate it. And I would consider you to consider the possibility of just owning it. It's not that you made it up or someone else. You are Philosopher Dave.
All right. You're Coach Bob. I'm Philosopher Dave.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Coach Bob, Philosopher Dave.
Yeah, no. And I've heard you say that a couple times. Well, I came up with it. Who cares? You are that. Because again, just how you even summed up with the 4 I's, even if it wasn't yours, you used it at an appropriate time and made it pretty simple that I'm like, okay. And there was a philosophy behind it. It wasn't just a recanting of something. Yeah. So
I'm a pattern seeker finder, essentially, is what I am. And I look for the root behind everything. Yep. Which is a constant digging exercise. Right. So models, I can grab, business models fascinate me. And I'm always looking for the underlying common denominator behind all of them.
Right. Interesting. Do you think most visionaries can see models or use models?
No, I think every visionary is different in their own way. Right. I mean, I know some, just incredibly purpose-driven, ambitious visionaries who do not have a concept for models at all. Right. So it comes down to what is your makeup? Right. And I've done a lot of work on this. So I've gone through tons of assessments, therapy, coaching, whatever, to really understand this in myself. So probably I've done this to uncover what the operating system is for Philosopher Dave more than anything else. And a lot of the visionaries that I work with, I don't necessarily see that kind of interest in self-reflection.
So I consider an implementer.
Or I should say intense interest in self-reflection.
Right. No, and I appreciate that. And I think I share that with you. I think I do share that with you. So in that, because to me, an implementer is a coach. So you're a coach. Are you helping them to figure out their model? And with EOS, helping them to figure out because I think a lot of visionaries, it's something like this. And so for someone to, yes, with EOS, but also with coaching from someone like yourself to help them to figure out their model. Does that make sense? Because I think you do that.
Yeah. So I do find that the people that I enjoy working with the most are visionaries that are very purpose-driven. Right. They're either the thing that they're building, the business, is something that they're so passionate about because they're trying to solve a problem in the world, for example. Or It is about getting freedom for themselves to be their very best. In either event, there is still an element of self-actualization for them where they're going to be their very best. And so I take a very keen interest in helping to get them free to achieve exactly that outcome, because they will be a bottleneck for everybody else if they don't get there.
Right.
And remember the 4 I's, they are modeling a behavior.
Right.
So if they don't take that journey, which incidentally, by the way, Bob, it's the hero's journey.
Yep. Right.
Then nobody else can take it either.
Right.
In fact, they're actually modeling something that's counterproductive. People will look for them to them for direction. And on one hand, they'll often think, hey, this is kind of selfish for me to get all this freedom.
Right. And there's guilt.
And be my best. But in fact, you're serving them by doing that.
Right. Yep. I appreciate that. So the hero's journey, how often do we visionaries want to be the hero and or think we have to be the hero, and then yet with those two cause ourselves a lot of stress?
Well, it's a painful journey.
Right.
I mean, there's no getting around. I mean, it is painful. There's pain that comes with this stuff. You don't grow without pain. So lots of people don't embark on the journey. And generally they don't because they get stuck in an identity that they think is unchanging.
And their current situation isn't bad enough to take that leap that we talked about earlier. Right. Because it's a leap and it's escaping the comfortableness. But to say, I've got to do this.
Yeah. So this is where the pain comes.
Right.
You have to step over that threshold and experience it to grow exponentially.
And do you think we people and or visionaries learn more from success or failure?
Unquestionably the latter.
Which sucks.
There's some of the pain. Latter. Yeah, there's no getting around it. So I was riffing on this morning because I obviously I read a lot. And so the recurring pattern is that all growth comes from pain. And if you think about it, physical growth.
I tried to admit that it didn't for a long time.
Yeah, so physical growth with kids, right? Right. You have growth spurts. There's pain involved with this. So I thought about this because I riff sometimes on religious ideas. So there's this idea of the Garden of Eden. So the apple was eaten, knowledge was transferred. Right. You get kicked out of paradise. All right. That is the story of human life. Right. All knowledge comes with some element of departure, some element of pain.
Right. And as us visionaries take a lot of leaps and therefore fall down fairly often, to have that perseverance to keep plugging and or learning, not doing the same thing over and over, I think that's something very unique that I hadn't really thought of. Our persistence, maybe being naive about it, but it's like, so I think we are constant learning machines, if that makes sense or resonate at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
So we have this core value within the EOS community called grow or die. Right. That's the recognition of this. You have to face the discomfort, go through the discomfort to grow. There is a gift that you get for doing that, and it is some level of enlightenment. Right. But you have to go through that path to get there. Yep. And then discover there's something on the other end that you have to go through as well. And that repetitive process. I'm trying to think of the author who quoted it best for me. It was Phil Stutz. Right? He said that life is uncertainty, pain, and constant work. Those three things.
It's the dream.
The trick to life is loving that it is those things, because that repetitive cycle is what is in front of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the gift that comes from going through that cycle over and over again.
Yeah. With my son right now, he's taking a year off because of elbow surgery from baseball. And he already gets it. He's got the discipline and he sees the long view. And so we've been talking a lot about the long view. He will be stronger because of it.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. And then even my wife and I, we've been humbled by it because he has often been one of the better kids on the team. Mm-hmm. And he's just so fun to watch. And to watch him watch is really hard. Yeah. And yet also I'm learning compassion for the other parents who show up when their kids are able to, but maybe not playing. And we've never experienced that. So here, rather than feeling sorry for ourselves, we're still showing up, and it's a lot of road trips, but to support him and support the team, not just because he's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
So that's the long view has been very relevant in our life lately. But, I appreciate that. So we talked a little bit about Detroit. So what is your view of entrepreneurship in Detroit? History and or current and or future for entrepreneurship in the Motor City?
It does feel sometimes like there is kind of this something in the water. I don't know.
Right.
But there are a lot of entrepreneurs in this area. There is an ecosystem of entrepreneurship. There is a legacy of great entrepreneurship.
Right.
It exists in other places as well. I think to a certain extent I feel it in Detroit because there's still remnants of this being what was once really a big manufacturing town. I mean, you just notice it with the various plants that are still there, some that have been repurposed, some that are still waiting to be repurposed, and just how all the residential neighborhoods spread around those things. So this is like literally a city that was born on it, and one particular industry that obviously grew up here and it's still pretty much a global hub for that, for automotive. But there is very much a feeling, and maybe some of it is just I've lived here so long, but I've also lived in New York City. I've also lived in London for many years. Right. I did not quite get the same feel in those places, both of those being kind of more like finance entrepreneurs more than anything else. Whereas it feels more diverse.
We build stuff.
Yeah.
Not just think of stuff.
Right. And also there's an element of, I almost say kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes a little bit.
Right.
So the recycling of past industries and birth of new industries.
Right. Well, I feel we're leaders in ushering in the industrial age and help building the planes and whatnot for protecting our democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that was done here. And it's interesting because I've often looked outside of Detroit and maybe a metaphor outside of myself for answers and realizing we have so much right here. And then we're both in EO Detroit. So what has that entrepreneur community, especially here in Detroit, done for you, and how are you serving it?
Well, here's the interesting thing is I have had a home in this area for 35 years, 36 years.
Right.
But I have lived and traveled throughout that time in other places. So when I started as an EOS implementer in Detroit, I really didn't have much of a local network until I started sponsoring EO.
Right.
And that's where I met that many of the second stage entrepreneurs, I call them second stage because they're not generally startups, that within this market, and got a sense for the level of diversity amongst those folks and the amount of creativity that is there. I love the Detroit chapter of EO. It has been a fascinating experience to get to know that group of individuals and to experience what it's like to be in like a cabal of that kind of energy.
Right. Interesting. And so, yes. And so I got two other questions. One, well, I've got several, but two around that. One is a lot of visionaries that I work with and know turn into coaching or coaches. And I say, you've done that. So how has that served you? And why do you think a lot of visionaries evolve into coaches?
I know what it was for me. And in my case, I think I am at my heart and core a teacher.
Right.
That's in my DNA. And I was probably destined for an academic career. And I had letters of recommendation. I was going on to Columbia University to get an MBA.
Go Ivy.
And then I just I stopped because I like that. I did not. My parents were educators. My dad was a university professor.
So that might have been your destiny, right?
And the thing that I liked about it was sort of the ivory tower thinking, the idea of being in a place where you're constantly exposed to new ideas, where there's a lot of teaching going on. Yeah, but there wasn't a lot of money in it,
right?
And I needed to go out and sow my own oats first. So I've, in many ways, come back to what I think my true self has been after having a very long entrepreneurial journey.
Right. And so now you're helping to teach other visionaries, other entrepreneurs.
The visionaries that I know that go into coaching have that element in them. There's some other deeper purpose that has always existed in them. And they then transfer their entrepreneurial skills into that. That's
an interesting question. I want to spend more time on that on my own looking at that. But I find a lot of visionaries that I work with are teaching what they are learning or have learned. So I appreciate what you're saying about having that pedigree of education. And I find not all of them are that. It's personal education. It's like, I had this health issue and this is what helped me. And now I'm written a book about it. And so it's interesting because I don't think a lot of them are coaching pedigree, but they love to teach what they've learned.
Yes. So the saying is, we teach best what we need to learn.
Totally.
So this is the essence of it. And I do it precisely for the same reason.
Right.
When I'm teaching these things, I am relearning them or learning them at a deeper level.
Right.
And that's obviously very fulfilling for me.
Right. And so a question for you, Dr. Doug Brackman, and Driven, from what I've heard from him and in the book, whatnot, he talks a lot about the attributes of a driven, and a lot of us visionary entrepreneurs, I think, are driven, at least, and he says that. And one of the things that kind of shocked me, but I think is very apparent, is imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. So what's your take on imposter syndrome and how that drives a lot of us visionaries?
All right. So
philosophize me.
Yes.
Literally.
So I picked up this concept from a number of different places recently. And the first one has to do with the imposter syndrome. So what is it? It is actually something that a large segment of the population experiences. Behind that is whatever self-talk is going on. And the self-talk usually is an I am statement of some kind.
Right.
I am followed ... by what fill in the blank, right? I am disorganized, or I am not proactive, or I'm any of those things. So the challenge for a visionary, particularly when they're leading a group of people, is all that shit comes with it.
Right.
Your job, this is the big one for the visionary, is you have to take all those I am statements, and they are all diverse. Everybody's got their own hang up, right? But it's driving their behavior, and it is, in essence, it is the core of their identity. You have to overwhelm it. So this is what I got from Steve Chapman.
Yep.
You have to overwhelm the I am statements. Your job as a visionary is to take all those people with all their various I am statements, including yours, and create a one big we are.
Right.
That's the job of a visionary.
Cool. I love that description. Very cool. Thank you. All right. Very good. I'm solved on that one.
Should we make an issues list?
Right. Topics. So I learned when I first became an implementer 12 years ago from Jeanette Wade talking about different types of connectors. And you and I have talked about that. What is the value of connecting, and is that a common trait of visionaries that are good at and like to?
Okay, so repeat that question for me so I can make sure I understand.
So what I learned from Jeanette, or what I remember, is there's 4 different types of connectors. So when I went through that, I'm like, I have 180 connectors.
Yeah.
And then when she had to sort them out, I had 1 or 2 that were level 4, which are ambassadors that are seeking out to say, how can I help Bob help more people?
Yes.
And then I had 3 or 4 that were in I forget what the load is called, but that third level that will introduce you to people. And the second level is if someone asks, they'll say whatever. So you and I have talked about levels 3 and 4. And I guess the reason I bring it up is I love to connect, and I get joy out of connecting. Mm-hmm. So and if I introduce, and I've done that for you. I mean, where it's like, I could have literally got that account.
Yeah.
And it was like, but no, that's not what we're here for. And so that builds trust. I feel good about it. And I know it will come back, whatever that means, whether it be a hug or whatever. And Wes Matthews, who we both know, when we had we had a Visionary Forum meeting when we first got locked down. And it was probably 2 or 3 weeks after we were locked down. And I invited 18 people to an in-person meeting and 17 showed up. And again, if someone's not feeling good, they would have stayed home.
Yeah.
And we went through it. And at the end, Wes, who's very dramatic, tough, and I love him. He's helped me a lot. At the end, he's like, you know what? I realize I'm good at connecting. I like to connect. And he almost was shaking and says, I need to connect. Mm-hmm. And I find a lot of visionaries are like that. And so, and again, we've talked about it. We've connected for each other. You've referred me to people who are connectors. So I just wanted to get your philosophy on, is that a trait of visionaries? And why is that so important to us visionaries?
I don't know if I would say that is a trait of visionaries per se.
Yeah.
I do believe that is a trait of certain individuals for which that concept is important. I also love the way Jeanette articulated it because I learned from that as well. But where I go to Aristotle's concept of friendship. Aristotle speaks of friendships as being of 3 kinds. There are friends of utility. Those are useful friends. And
right.
Work friends often fall into that. Work colleagues often fall into that category. But without the utility, without the usefulness that comes from that relationship, there isn't a friendship.
Right.
There's friendships of pleasure, and these might be golf buddies, right. Things like that. But without that golf outing or that get together on Saturday morning, we wouldn't be friends. Right. It's an enjoyable. Enjoy doing this, but we're not going to be friends outside of that. So the highest order of friends of the good. And this concept of friends of the good is you have each other's back.
Right.
So I equate that with as what Jeanette would call ambassadors.
Right.
And in fact, I have a group of people that we're meeting tonight in my session room in Southfield. We call ourselves the Friends of the Good because we aspire to be that individual with each of the members of the group.
Right. I love it. Thank you. You are a philosopher. Are you going to write a book? And if you did, what would the title be?
Well, it's interesting because if you recall, there was an EO event at one point with Anna David, I think was her name.
I was there. That's how we came up with the title of my book.
And the very first person she picked on was me.
Right. I forgot.
And I was just sitting there as an observer, and she extracted a book out of me in about 15 minutes.
Right.
And
after she stalked us virtually for a little bit, right?
The working title that came out of it was essentially, "You Don't Matter," I think, which was really a crass way of saying just relax.
Right. No, I love it.
Don't put so much importance in so many things. Well, then the very next conversation was with you, and the book title was "I Matter."
Right.
So I don't think my working title is "You Don't Matter."
So
I have no idea what that is, and I actually don't know if there's going to be a book written or not, but several people have been like, "You got to write a book."
And I don't think everyone has to write a book or needs to write a book. But I just find a great exercise as I'm coaching people to come up with a fun, quirky title, even if there's nothing else. And so I'd love to have that conversation because it usually is part of even the legacy that we leave. Whether it's the legacy may not be the book.
Yeah,
it's teaching. So again, you're Philosopher Dave, and you are teaching. And again, in a couple of minutes, we could probably figure out a working title. And then it helps me to live that legacy today. And you're already living it. Mm-hmm. So, but it's just kind of something to think about because I think that's a great exercise, whether you do it or not. But yes, that was an interesting day I thought I had my title, and that's the power of the community.
Yeah.
And that's EO Detroit. And people, it's like, Wes helped me to realize that the title I had initially was bullshit.
Are you sure that's the word that he used exactly?
So here's that title fucking sucks, dude. And he jokes, he goes, but I said it with love, and he did. But then the group rallied to say, okay, what's the issue you're trying to help with? And what would that be called? And literally that day we came up with the word and then the title. And that is just like, and whether I wrote the book or not, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm here to help people to do. So that was something to consider. A couple other questions, and this has been fun. I really appreciate it. Oh, I just like even what we're going through here today, I want to get your take on Dr. Bill Isaacs that I met through an EO gig 26 years ago, Birthing a Giants. And he had a book, and I went through one of his workshops, and it's Dialogue, the Art of Learning Together. So that is, again, you're a connector, a friend for good. You research and you simplify things for people, which is awesome. And
whether, guess what book I'm reading right now?
What is that?
Dialogue.
Is that Bill Isaacs? Oh, that's interesting.
I just started it.
That's funny.
Last week.
Very cool. Yeah, I went through.
A coach introduced it to me, and I started reading it immediately.
When I saw him at MIT, I went to Vern Harnish, who we spoke to, and I'm like, I want to move here and learn from people like that.
Yeah.
And that's when I partnered with Vern at that point, which, again, it's all learning experience, was very cool. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to learn together. You are a great teacher and a great student, which I appreciate. All right, what else did I have here? I guess I have one last question, but if you have anything else, this is called Viva la Visionary, and the concept is, there's a lot of teachings for how to be a great integrator, how to be this, and a lot of people are like, how do I be a great visionary? And to me, it's the art of learning together, and it is very individualized, like you mentioned. And so, is there anything else that you want? Because my explanation of Viva la Visionaries, it's for visionaries, to visionaries, from visionaries, and about visionaries. So, anything else that you would like to share from your experience about visionaries or questions you have for me?
Yes, I know
that was a lot.
I am curious about the origin of Viva la Visionary. It's a wonderful concept. But
sure, I appreciate
how did you land on that one specifically?
It was during a visionary forum meeting. So that's a peer group that we have of visionaries who are networking for each other and creating a safe space to learn together. And we were talking about how sometimes we visionaries get cast aside, or at least we think so. And as we were kind of like, how come this? It was John LaDuca for My Playbook Builder. Sorry if I'm not saying that right, but out of the west side of Michigan. John's a good friend. He spoke at our Visionary Forum, a summit in the past, and he just said, "Viva la Visionary!" And
it came out of John's mouth.
And it was "Long live the Visionary." And I was like, yeah. And so it's not that we're better than anyone else, but often people are like, "What do you do?" And I think a lot of us visionaries are like, "What do I do?" And people come to me and say, "Okay, with EOS, we talk about to let go of the vine and to trust people, especially if you have the people and the processes." But a lot of visionaries are like, okay, but then what do I do? Because that's been my identity. And a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know what to do. It's like, no, who are you? And be that quirky, fun, goofy guy person who started the business. Yeah. And I think a lot of times with process, we sometimes get cast aside, which I don't even think is a bad thing, because sometimes we'll stop the process. So then it's kind of how do we reinsert the visionary and put the soul back in our role? Yeah. And that's what I'm here to do, is help the visionary to do that. So it's the I am statements that you mentioned. It's like, I'm a visionary. And a lot of times it's like, so what do you do? Just sit around and think of ideas? And EOS talks about one of the roles is R&D. And I'm like, fuck R&D. I'm not going to go R&D. But R&D is ultimately connecting, learning, putting the pieces together. And that's R&D. And when I learned that as a visionary, and I trusted the team and left, and they were like, dude, we're actually more productive when you're not here. But then I'm like, okay, and I literally would go hiking, and a lot of times it was with people in my industry, and I'd hear, oh, this is working and that's not working. And because I was elevated to the visionary seat without guilt or with less guilt, then I could just see clearly. And that's, so again, a lot of times we say, yep, he's in the visionary seat, but is he actually being the visionary? So to celebrate the visionary, and literally we get a bad rap from a lot of people. And sometimes it's probably legit, but so again, long-winded, it's long live the visionary. And again, at the end of the day, it's not that we're better than anyone, but let's be who we are and be that great leader.
Yeah. So Abraham Maslow wrote on this, and I think there's this concept of normal, and visionaries stick out or
Right.
stand out. It's certainly not quote unquote normal behavior. But what I love about Maslow is he said, what is normal? Normal is, in essence, a psychopathology of the average.
Right.
That's what it is. This is not something to aspire to.
Right.
We tend to look at people who are outside of that range as something that needs to be fixed.
Right.
Whether it's up here or down here, either way, it's outside of the range, and therefore it is not normal. And I do think that there's this DNA, not DNA, but there's this general connection that the human species has. We're all driven by survival instincts,
Right.
which tends to create these, cultural aggregations of people who talk the same, think the same, act the same,
Right.
et cetera. And so anything that is different from that is going to be quote unquote abnormal. Well, every freaking visionary falls into that category.
Right.
So you have to look at human psychology as not being trending towards the average, but trending towards self-actualization,
Right.
being your very best. And the thing with visionaries in general is they're more willing because they're being a creator is very, very important to them.
Right.
It is an actual aspect of all humanity, but it's particularly important for visionaries to be creators, and that by itself is going to push you to doing things that are uncomfortable for you and certainly would be uncomfortable for other people as well.
Right. Very well put. So if you could give me one experience share for me and or for visionaries, what would that be?
One experience share?
And it could be from yourself or people you coach.
The one that I use with the people I coach is that board meeting in New York. And I'm usually doing it as a cautionary tale. It's like, okay, so you own this business. Let me show you what let me at least hold the mirror up to you for a moment. Because if you had investors, this is what could have happened to you in the situation that you're currently in.
Right. And celebrate your role as a visionary and your team and your opportunity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we're like, well, as soon as I sell, then I can do this. It's like, be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for.
I appreciate that. Dave, this has been so fun. I appreciate you as a friend and as a teacher and a fellow connector. So I appreciate your time and your wisdom.
I appreciate spending time with you, Coach Bob.
All right. Love you, brother.
Viva la Visionary.
Viva la Visionary. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Peace.